Cesarewitch, always an ultra-competitive handicap, and this year I think it's been boosted by the appearance of the Triumph Hurdle winner, Countrywide Flame, at 8-1, who last time out won at Chester off 84 on the flat, a £6 rise to 90. Clearly, he's got a great chance.
He's a horse that, I mean, tries so hard. Involved Marshall Law, who finishes third. I remember the connections who communicating on Twitter about Countrywide Flame earlier in the year saying, you know, I thought jokingly you've seen the Triumph Hurdle winner about 3 hours. Yeah, tough little horse, but will be found out by the better ones. And even, I have to admit, I even thought there was an element of circumstance about the horse's success in the Triumph Hurdle, but he ran really well at Aintree. And
what do you mean by the element of circumstance?
Well, I thought they quickened up a long way out, and I thought,
and that favoured him.
Well, I thought that he was in the right place for the tempo of the race.
Yeah.
But I'd have to temper that view slightly by what I saw at Aintree when the horse was ridden differently and still produced a real solid effort. Now, whatever you believe between comparisons with flats and jumping mark, there's no doubt that you can make a case for being well in. I mean, the horse actually runs off 88, I think, with a £4 penalty as opposed to the official mark of 90.
True, yes.
But compare that to 152 over hurdles. I mean, you're normally talking about, people say 30 to £40. Well, you're talking 60 odd. So it's a very sensible approach by connections, and clearly the horse won well at Chester, which probably may have favoured the nippier type. But I'm loath to rule Countrywide Flame out of anything, really, because I feel I've done the horse a little bit of a disservice, and I just think the horse is tougher and better than I might have anticipated.
I think we're all suckers for that in a way. Catch It was another case where you sort of expect the later types to sort of go past them.
Well, I mean, he made his hurdles debut and was beaten, you know, was it October 2011 at Wetherby? In fact, I think he ran before that, actually. He did, yeah, he ran in July, you know, and he just looked like an early season novice. And I felt I've done him a bit of service. He's well treated. He's been well found, though, in the market. You know, that's the problem. He's a pretty obvious one.
What about Olympiad, who's unexposed, lightly raced, and from the shrewd Dermot Wells stable, and last time out, which we can have a look at in a few moments' time, Olympiad was victorious at York, has won on soft at Gowran earlier in the season, good to firm this day at York, so he's a versatile type, and the ground can go either way with him, and I think the ground may ride, given the weather forecast, just on the slightly softer side, but I don't think that should put anyone off with Olympiad.
Well, if anything, I agree. I think there's more of a question mark on the faster York surface, than given both his Irish form and the fact that he's by Galileo, than the softer surface he'll probably encounter. Again, lightly raced, only had the 5 starts, and as a result, there would be no surprise if he was continuing to improve. He's dealt a mark of 96, so that's £7 higher than when scoring at York, but lightly raced progressive. Stayed the 2 miles there perfectly okay. York, to some degree, just favours horses that are ridden close to the speed, more so than Newmarket, and maybe that didn't draw out some of the stamina needs that he'll have. There's a little bit of a doubt on the dam side as to whether you'd really stay a massive amount. Indian Ridge Dam, who is a brother to the Irish 1,000 Guineas winner, that doesn't scream Cesarewitch.
Then you need a horse that really stays the trip to it.
Well, I think, put it this way, I think Olympiad will find stamina far more tested at Newmarket than was the case at York, and maybe that's where the ground aided him slightly. Even though he might not have handled it as well as soft, it probably made it less of a test of stamina. Progressive, though, only had 5 runs. No surprise, continues improving. Just not sure whether 2 miles 2, if it came up soft, and again, been well found.
Might be a Melbourne Cup runner in time.
Well, that sort of profile is definitely the case. I think he might be a 2-miler horse, you know, that sort of uses his speed to better effect than a 2-mile, 2-furlong handicap horse. He might be suited by conditions races where his tactical speed might be more of an asset than it might be on Saturday.
Clearly, I've made a few Australian references since I've been back, because they said in my ear that's the first Australian reference of the night. There will be plenty more coming your way.
We won't tell you what the spread is.
Go ahead. No, nothing. Motivado is the next horse we're going to take a look at, who hasn't run in Australia.
Looks like Marta, though.
That's Marta, yeah. Motivado we'll get on to in a few moments' time. Apologies. Tell us about Marta, because I know you're quite keen on the chance of this one.
Yeah, look, I think Marta's a very interesting runner. First of all, the horse was absent for a long, long time, September 2010 to September 2012, so 2 years. You then wonder why the horse has been kept in training, what the target is. And first up at Doncaster in a muddling race, as soon as it quickened behind Sir Graham Wade, he got completely left behind. that piece of footage you're seeing behind Caucus off a mark of, well, it was a listed race, and he is now off a mark of 97. In his heyday, he was capable of running off, when he won a good race, a handicap at Goodwood off 96, and he was rated 105. And I think his strong travelling nature is good. My worry is definitely if it does come up soft, then that is a concern.
He used to be owned by Highclere, didn't he?
He did, and
he always had quite a big reputation with him as well. They always thought a lot of him. He's clearly had problems. But now in the care of George Baker, and it's the type that I can see George Baker doing really well with.
Well, and Richard Hughes has got history with him, if you like. He rode him as long ago as June 2009 when he finished third in the Duke of Edinburgh. He often rode him to that. He rode him to that Goodwood handicap victory. He holds him together nicely, etc. And I think Richard had the confidence that was blowing away the cobwebs. He only went up £1 off the back of that success. But if you think the three horses that were in front of him there, and when we join them, you'll see how strongly he was travelling. Caucus rated 104, Cavalryman 115, and Lost in the Moment 110. And we know where they're going.
Australia.
There you go, two. And as a result, that was a fair performance. Whether or not, if it comes up soft, a bit like I was saying about Olympiad, but he was a bigger price. He was 20s off the back of that. And it does fit about him being targeted for that particular race, and hence the reason that he's been brought to the boil with that in mind.
I think you're onto a good thing there. Well, as good a thing in the Sarah, but I like the angle in. I think it's all very valid points there, Richard. We do have Motivado now to have a look at. They were too busy laying into me in my ear than digging this footage out. Tominator also in here. Motivado finishes fourth. This is of course in the Ebor, and Motivado, who previously had looked good when winning at Goodwood, ran not a confusing race, but it was a patchy race in part.
Well, I think he's a patchy horse actually. I think that's a good word to describe him really, because even when he won, he carries his head a bit high, and he has one little burst that takes him there, and then if it doesn't take him to the front, it's not good enough. And I think he's high enough in the weights, personally. I don't think he's going to be able to sustain the effort for long enough. He won his race at Goodwood with a turn of foot coming amongst horses, but you see, here, you still think he might do it, and then he just gets the wobbles and wanders around, and head comes up a bit. And I prefer, in a way, Tominator, who's an interesting owner change. He's now with Patsy Byrne, now with John Joe O'Neill and Jamie Spencer. Interesting horse. I presume he may well be seeing some obstacles at some stage, but he's a tough, durable stayer who, the plate victory and the success 2 starts ago. I think he's an interesting contender, because I think he really will see it out. If it gets a bit tough for the likes of Marta and his aches and pains and Olympiad on the ground, I don't think that'll be the case for Tominator.
So what are your main concerns with a horse like Motivado? Slightly sort of temperament-wise, just not sure he's got the...
No, I think you have to sit back with him and ask him for one effort. And I just think in the Cesarewitch, it's unlikely they're going to be as well grouped at the end of 2 miles as they are at a mile and a half. And I don't think those tactics are quite as easy to employ, because I think he's got quite a sudden turn of foot. But I think that's all he's got. I don't think he'll gallop all the way to the line. I think he looks around once he comes off the bridle, and it might make it quite hard for Luke Morris to time that right. It's not. I don't think that's as straightforward as sitting nice and pretty, travelling up strongly, as probably Richard Hughes and whoever rides Olympiad will probably be able to do.
We've seen some good winners of the Cesarewitch in the past, the likes of Darley's son, who provided David Simcock with a big win. Yeah, he's gone off the boil somewhat since then, but it's a competitive race to win. And you, despite the fact that there are those unexposed types like Darley's son, going into a race, to have a battle-hardened sort like Tominator on your side is something that I think can fill you with confidence, because he's a horse is ready for the battle, if you like.
It's a funny race down the years, and I was just looking at the recent winners. Aim to Prosper, who was nearly a group horse. He's found his level. Never Can Tell. Obviously, Darley's son Caracciolo, who won at the age of 11, of course, fits the hurdling bill. Countrywide Flame's not that old, but comes from that hurdling sort of background. Leg spinner, an Irish horse that you suppose you could say was sort of a la Olympiad a little bit. Detroit City, who made on to be a better name over hurdles. But it comes at a tough time of the year. The only reason I played Marta was I was impressed by... I suddenly realised why I thought the horse had been kept in training, and probably as a result, having thought that, I felt obliged to have a bet. A 20-1 was certainly fair enough at the time, but I don't think I'm well ahead of the correct odds, given the way the market and the ground is.
Now with Skybet at 16-1, Countrywide Flame is the 8-1 favourite. Tominator, we discussed, 14 to 1, Motivado 10 to 1. Hurricane Higgins has seen out the trip well in his tries before, these sort of extended trips.
Just always a slight stall worry with him, because that's why he ran in that race at Goodwood, was 2 miles 5, as there were no stalls. He gets into a good position though. That's what I quite like. He's for a stay
forward.
Yes, he's relatively uncomplicated in terms of. That's what I tend to like. Repeater, I think, is another one that's flashed bits of form. Wouldn't surprise me if Repeater was beat Motivado. Did just fluff his lines, I think, the last time. But if he gets in, Andrea Atzeni aboard, it wouldn't surprise me if Repeater ran a better race actually than Motivado.
So Countrywide Flame, 8 to 1, may very well be on the champion hurdle trail this year, but he's going to try and get the Cesarewitch along the way.
Well, I think that's entirely legitimate, given if you're going to make the most of the mark. This is the ideal opportunity to do so. I think Connection has been very clever there, because I just think that there must be a doubt. There always is with 5-year-olds. There must be a doubt as to whether the horse is really up to champion hurdle class.
And he's clearly a horse from last season's form that can run over an extended period of time over the longer distances.
I think it's a very canny move by Connections. If you can get some money in the kitty now, then that's a lot easier than it is chasing some of the bigger pots and finding you're not quite good enough later on in the season.
Good stuff. Thanks, Richard.